Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome into another episode of the Steelers Q&A, coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, and formerly Twitter, now X, on the Steel Curtain Network. My name is Jeremy Betts, and I am your host for the show. And I've got a guest with me, waking up early on a Saturday morning. I appreciate it because typically it's just me here when we have to run this thing on Saturdays, and it's going to be fun. It's one of my favorite people to work with here at the Steel Curtain Network. It is the one and only Dave Schofield. Dave, how you doing, man? It's good to have you on.
I'm happy to be here. This show is a lot more fun when you can have multiple people to bounce stuff off of. I feel bad for you on Saturday mornings. I'm like, hey, let me know. I'll hit you up. I like to catch the show anyway when I'm laying in bed. So
sure.
At least this time I'll be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Every now and then we'll get you in the live chat, giving your thoughts and everything, and it's great. But let's do it live here today, back and forth. Looks like we got a couple people viewing right now. If you want to chime in with your questions in the comment section on YouTube, we would love to discuss the Pittsburgh Steelers with you in the upcoming game and just your questions about the team. That's what this show is about. It's the Q&A. Also, if you miss the live show, it's all right. You can check this out wherever you get your podcasts on audio only, or you can go back and watch the YouTube version again if you want to see our beautiful faces on a Saturday morning after we just woke up. But hey, Dave, let me ask you this.
Okay.
The title of the show here is this the spark they needed? And we've been talking about it all week here on the Steel Curtain Network. Everywhere you talking Steelers. Do we see just overall a massive, significant change in this offense, or is this going to be kind of a slow burn here? What are we seeing?
That is the question that we all want to tune in for at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Is this the spark? I'll tell you, it's the spark the fan base needed when it came to the offense. That's for sure. There's no doubting that one. The thing is, will that translate to the players? I assume there'll be some growing pains. I don't expect everything to go fluidly. They're going to have to burn a timeout or two in the first half. Just brace yourself for it, Steelers fans. It's going to happen. It's just a whole new thing. They're basically starting over the play calling process, meaning figuring out the personnel that's going on the field, what the play is going to be, getting that play out to the quarterback for them to relay it to the huddle. This is the stuff that you do in August, the beginning of August, and they are now doing it the last game in November. Now, do I think I don't think it's going to be as bad as what it would have been in the beginning of August, but it's not going to be at the November quality that Coach Tomlin talked about on Tuesday with some of the other things he was referring to. So I expect there to be some growing pains, but I think we're going to see at least some subtle things that are different. It's got to be. And I think the players have to feel like, you know what, Coach Tomlin believes in us enough that he's not going to let mediocrity keep going. We've got to step up. If this was what the players believe was the issue, I think they're going to feel that spark.
Yeah, I think so too. This to me is the spark can be from a usage standpoint, and it can also be, like you're saying, from just a morale standpoint as well. Because we saw the lowest morale maybe we've seen of this team last week, and I just think that when you layer in now new people that have been with the team, obviously position coaches, a lot of times these players have fantastic relationships with their position coaches, and sometimes that also improves just the intangible side of things. And I think that's where you see the most changes intangibly in how they emote during this game, how they get what the level that they're willing to give in this game, the confidence that they play with. And then to me, the other big thing that can change right away is how players are used. And maybe some of the concepts are the same, because obviously you're not going to install a brand new offense in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
But at least maybe at this point, your superstars or potential superstars that you have on your team become the guys that you lean on in big time moments, big situations, the guys that you scheme up. And we've talked about this in our Slack channel. George Pickens, Jalen Warren, using this offensive line to your advantage now as a running team, and so how can we do all this and make it smooth with the communication issues that we're going to have? There's going to be some bumps in the road, like you mentioned, but I do think that at least emotionally and schematically, as far as usage goes, that you can see some significant changes. So we've got
that's what we're hoping for.
Absolutely. We got some people chiming in. We've got some Tomlin doubters. One here in Mark Malone says Tomlin will inevitably screw this up too. I don't know. I guess we'll see. And then saying also sooner or later we're gonna have to be honest with ourselves. Tomlin is the problem. I don't know if I see it that way, Dave. But let's treat this question. Do you see this as Tomlin's problem, or is this more significant, more variables than we're giving acknowledgement to just by saying it's Tomlin?
I mean, ultimately everything starts and stops with the head coach.
Yeah.
Assuming he has the free reins to do everything and not being held back by ownership.
Yeah.
And some people like Tomlin's been around. He's not held back by ownership. We hear things, we get information from places. Some of it we're allowed to share, some of it we're not. But I'll tell you this. When Tomlin said this was his decision, this was Tomlin's decision to let Matt Canada go. But he couldn't do it until he got approval.
Right.
If it wasn't for the approval process, I don't know if we'd have started 2023 with Matt Canada. I'll just leave it at that.
Good insight there. If that is the case, then obviously you've got you have a team here in the Pittsburgh Steelers that we all acknowledge is a family-run business.
Yeah.
Until we don't want to acknowledge that anymore. Until we want to place blame on somebody. And so I think that you absolutely, based on anything that we could be hearing and just the feel of how this whole process went down, Tomlin has to say, obviously, in what you were mentioning, how the team is running everything, but the financial decisions ultimately come down to the big guy upstairs.
He doesn't sign the checks.
Make them. Yeah, exactly.
Tomlin doesn't sign the checks.
Right on, right on. So the fact that this was done in season correlates to probably a big moment for me. We've heard from some of the Steelers beat writers that there were big meetings that morning beforehand, and not all was shared about who was in the meetings, but it's just one of those things you've got to take it with a grain of salt, any type of thing that you hear, because we don't know exactly what's going on behind closed doors.
Exactly.
And I think as fans, part of our job is to trust the leadership of the team. And I don't think we do that enough, especially a leadership that has proven to be successful over time and time again. So let's see here. We've got George chiming in. George, you are saying what we're all saying, anxious to see what happens on Sunday. I think that, the Steelers get the Bengals obviously at a very good time. Dave, we were talking about the injury report yesterday on our Slack channel. And if you want to kind of run through that, there's some significant players that are going to be missing outside of just Joe Burrow.
Yes. Well, Joe Burrow, they have not put him on IR yet. I have a feeling that's coming later today. Because they'll need to switch some stuff around with their rosters. But the bigger ones to look at was also no T. Higgins. And why am I? Is it Taylor Britt? That's the last name.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Cam Taylor Britt.
That's right. Yep, he's their best corner. He got hurt last Thursday, but then they're like, "Oh, it's not as bad as what we thought." But he's still out for this game. So you're taking a team, a defense that I actually talked about this on Stat Geek this week, and I have an article coming out about it later today at SteelCurdNetwork.com. That this is probably based up through all the data we have through week 11. This is the worst defense the Steelers are facing this year. So if you're going to have to break in a new offensive coordinator, try to do some stuff with the offense, this is the best one to do. Now, there was one more questionable player with everything from this injury report. I'm trying to flip back in order to find it, because there was one more that I thought that was questionable that I thought was very interesting for the Bengals, and that's Jermaine Pratt with an illness. Now, when you hear illness, you're just like, well, they could come back from an illness, yeah. But if it's something that's kind of got you knocked out and you're just a little bit weaker, he could possibly play, but might not be 100%.
Yeah, and the other thing I always think about with illness is how many people is he going to spread it to between the Friday injury report and the Sunday game? You might have a surprise inactive because of that,
Yeah.
but we'll see. Obviously, when you miss big pieces, and the Steelers are missing some big pieces of their own, they're going to be missing Minkah Fitzpatrick, obviously, and then the injuries to the linebacker group can't be understated here as well. Even though they're past injuries, they're going to affect this team for every game moving forward because you've now got a position group basically starting over, kind of like the offensive schematic whole system starting over in the middle of the season. And in a crucial part, what's the big phrase that everybody says? The NFL season doesn't start until after Thanksgiving. Well, we're here,
it's
folks.
After Thanksgiving.
We're here, folks, and it's about to get real. So
yeah. Can I ask you
Dave,
a question about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
About the linebackers. All right. So the Steelers, who they have on the 53-man roster right now is Landon Roberts, Michael Walker. I always want to say McCall because the way it's spelled, but I'm pretty sure he goes Michael. Mark Robinson, and then the other one that they signed off the practice squad this week is it Blake I know it's Martinez.
Yep, Blake Martinez. Yep.
Do you think they have him active after being in Pittsburgh for only 3 practices, or do you think that we're going to see a Tariq Campbell for one more? They can elevate him one more time.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to see that and see Martinez inactive while he gets up to speed? Or could someone like a Miles Jack get activated or elevated and be a surprise?
Yeah. Can I give the Dave Schofield answer?
Sure. This is all stuff that's going to happen later today, so we'll find out eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
So, my thought was going to be like, it depends on how he's practiced, but to me, I think he would be activated for this game because this is I don't think he's been an all-pro, but I do believe this guy has been a Pro Bowler maybe a couple times. So I'd have to look that up again, but he is a league leader in tackles prior in his career. He's got a lot of starts under his belt. I kind of tracked his career a little bit because I'm in a dynasty league with IDP, and he was one of my draft picks, and he had been really good for me for several years, just racking up those individual defensive player fantasy points. And until obviously he decides to retire and then bounces around on some practice squads, but a very effective player, a good tackler, a tackling machine. I think that type of experience gives him an obvious leg up in the journey. Whether his football shape dictates that he can get on the field right away or not is the big question to me. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a big question of does he understand the defense. I think he's been around long enough to pick it up pretty quickly.
To let you know, it was 2017 when he led the NFL in tackles.
Okay, so it's been a few years.
Yes, it has been. But he actually had more tackles. He had the same number of tackles in 2018 and more tackles in 2019 and 2020, but did not lead the NFL in that category. 2019 was still with the Packers, and 2020 was with the Giants. Before that, he only played 3 games in 2021 and 4 games in 2022. Like I said, this is Injuries, Blake Martinez. To me, you got to remember, whether you're on the active roster or the practice squad, sometimes is how they can acquire you. They had no choice to put him on the active roster because he was on another team's practice squad, where somebody like a Miles Jack, they could put either because he's coming off the street. So just because who was it last year? Who was the defensive tackle that they picked up from the Jets practice squad, but they had him inactive for the rest of the season? They did that also with a linebacker, Tay Crowder. He was on the 53 because he came from a practice squad.
Right.
But they never had him active, and they elevated practice squad people to play above them. It's just how they were able to get him in the door. So I don't know that we have a good answer to that. I'm excited to see what move they make today to see if it's going to be Martinez or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see, obviously, later today and then on Sunday how this game breaks down and which players are out there making plays. I think when you're talking about now the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive changes, a lot of people are looking at the quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And we've got a question kind of revolving around that. So let's go ahead and pop this up from Tyrone Johnson. Tyrone asks, do the Steelers draft Drake May or Michael Penix. I'm assuming, obviously, he's referencing the 2024 draft in April. And first of all, I'd like to say that Drake May is not going to be there when the Steelers have any sort of chance at getting a pick in. Drake May is going to be one of the first or second players off the board. I would not be surprised if over the course of the offseason, when you're talking measurables and everything, and you're talking underwear Olympics, that he jumps Caleb Williams, who's been really the consensus number one quarterback in the draft. So this could be your first overall pick very easily in the draft this upcoming offseason. Michael Penix is a little bit more interesting. He could last till the middle of the first round. But, Dave, I think that the Steelers give Kenny Pickett year 3 with a new offensive system, and I think they should. That's my opinion, but I want to see what your thought on this is, as well as the players that maybe he's mentioned here from the college level.
All right. Well, first of all, that's from the college level. I'm not the draft person that you are. You are the one to ask this question because I follow like today, big game at noon. I don't know if I'll get to watch it or actually just follow the scores and everything on my phone. I'll follow that somewhat, because it's fun to throw 50 cents or $1 on a game here and there just to give you a little bit more reason to watch. You got to love how they have that going for you now. You can do it on your phone. But honestly, I don't know these prospects. I don't dive into draft stuff until the Steelers have absolutely played their last second of football in the 2023 season. I don't ask myself these kind of questions. We have people like you that answer these kind of questions. My focus is on the Steelers now getting ready to face the Cincinnati Bengals. But I will tell you this. I like what you said about Kenny Pickett, another year to develop. I think what happens over these next 7 games, it's not make or break for Pickett. He's probably going to get 1 year, unless it's really, really bad, unless you take everything you've gotten from Kenny Pickett so far, the last couple games, and you add interceptions on top of it, then when you really have a problem. Unless you get something like that, I have a feeling what they're going to do is specifically hire an offensive coordinator next offseason with Kenny Pickett in mind.
Yes.
And then we'll go from there.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, like, personally, my opinion on it is you have to. You spent the draft capital on him in the first round, and we all agree across Steelers Nation, basically globally, that Matt Canada's offense is a major, major issue.
Which we will see in the next 7 weeks, if that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how much change we'll see, it also needs to be considered as well, because like we've talked about, you're not going to introduce a whole new system in week 12. So they're going to be running a lot of the same concepts. If it improves to where the play calling is better and the flow of the offense is a little bit better and the usage of players is better and Kenny Pickett therefore looks better, then I think you say absolutely 100% we're bringing this guy back in year 3 under a new offensive coordinator. But to me also, if he struggles, if he continues to be it's a great day if he throws for a touchdown and 220 yards for Kenny Pickett, then I don't know if you can say, well, then he's not the answer still, because you have the basic Canada offense still in place, just different people operating it at this point and making the calls as to who is getting the targets and the ball. So to me, either way, he has to get year 3 under a new offensive coordinator. But that's just me. I don't know if that's the consensus across the board. I don't think it is. I think a lot of people are saying that are giving Kenny Pickett a 7-game ultimatum here, and I just don't do that for him personally.
Well, even if it's what we would want to do as a fan, what I often try to ask myself is, what will the Steelers do? That's why I didn't expect Matt Canada to get fired. I wasn't ready for that when you put that in the Slack channel. I was so mad. I was taking my daughter to the orthodontist, and I'm like, I've been waiting months to do this breaking news podcast.
Yeah,
Jeff has to do it. Oh, come on. Oh. But anyway,
right on.
That was very un-Steelers like. And do they do things that surprise us at times? Absolutely. The Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. That's another good example. But so it's not like it's cookie cutter, but still there are things that you can see with the Steelers of how they handle things. So I would expect the Steelers to give Kenny Pickett another year. at quarterback. Maybe even have another option that could even push him a little bit more.
Yeah.
Is potential, but they're not you're not going to go into training camp with somebody else that's listed as your QB1 other than Kenny Pickett.
Right. Now, the thing to remember is this is a deep quarterback draft. And so could the Steelers spend a second or third round pick on a quarterback? Absolutely. And I would even be in favor of that. I just think the best thought process is that you get as many people through the cycle as possible to see what you can find until you find the guy. And so the Steelers got lucky with the Roethlisberger deal where they knew he was the guy right away. Not so sure about Kenny Pickett now. So I think you just keep wheeling in options and competition for that QB1 spot until somebody takes it, runs with it, and says, I'm going to be a franchise quarterback. And so that is definitely something that they can do. Michael Penix Jr., Drake May, I think those guys are probably off the table for the Steelers if we consider what they're going to do with Kenny Pickett. But hey, Dave, let's take a quick break here so we can pay some bills. And then when we come back on the audio side, we're going to keep answering questions. If you're here live with us, don't go anywhere. We're still going to answer your questions. We're going to answer one from Brian Brown when we come back on the Steelers Q&A. And we're back here on the Steelers Q&A, coming to you live on a Saturday morning. Again, if you miss it live, you can always go back and check it out. But we do encourage you to come live and ask us some questions. We've got one here from Brian Brown, who is a faithful listener. Doesn't matter what time this show goes up. Brian Brown is in the chat. We appreciate you, Brian. And so this is a statement, but with a question in it here. It says, I think if the Steelers start running the ball and don't stop the first time it doesn't work, the pass game will open up on its own. What do you think? I still think Kenny is a good quarterback. Dave, I'll toss it to you. What do you think about this running game question?
Well, I covered some stats and everything on Stat Geek 2 weeks ago about how what you ultimately want from the Steelers is a very successful running game. Since 2015, going into week 11, since 2015, when the Steelers had rushed for 150 yards or more in a game, they were 28-1-1, with the tie being against the Browns in week 1, whenever that was, and the Scobie debacle game is what I call it, on that Thursday night in Pittsburgh against the Ravens. But then they added another loss to that one this past week when they ran for more than 150 yards and did not win the game. That's not very common. But when the Steelers throw for over 350 yards in a game, they don't have a winning record. Since I think it went back to 2000. It's when you get where you have to throw and have to get all those yards, it's generally not because it's a good situation. You really need that good balance. And balance isn't getting 100 or 350 passing yards in a game. That magic, 250 passing, 140 to 180 rushing, that right there just screams successful football. So if you get that running game going, like it has been, and they've got a good opponent to go against running the football this week, that should give your quarterback, whoever it is, a better chance. So I'm hoping Kenny Pickett can really come through and get back to having fun, like he would said in his interview this week.
Right on. Here's my thought is the Steelers have been running the ball when they've been doing it successfully now over the last few weeks. They've been running the ball 25, 30 times a game. And I love that. But here's my thought is that give Jalen 20 of those as opposed to 10 or 15. Give Jalen 20 of those. And maybe that's what happens here with Eddie Faulkner becoming the OC. But also, who is more polarizing to Steelers fans, but not polarizing in the Steelers organization more than Najee Harris? The Steelers, they love Najee Harris. And I think it has to do with his leadership and his charisma on the field in the locker room. And so I'm not just naturally sitting here assuming Eddie Faulkner, running backs coach, is now the offensive coordinator. Now they're going to give all the carries to Jaylen Warren. Although Jaylen Warren was kind of his guy. They rated him as their 6th best running back. That's the big story in that draft class. And when he was undrafted, they were like, ooh, let's snap him up. Now, but I'm also saying Najee Harris is in that room too. This is his running back coach as well. So let's just not assume that all of a sudden Jaylen Warren's going to get the bulk of the carries. They just need to be on balance, like you said. And I think that you balance that in who gets the football as well. To me, that's give Jaylen Warren more footballs than Najee Harris and use them accordingly. But you got to consider situation as well in a game like that.
Situation. You just hit it on the head right there. Don't force Najee Harris to be your guy on the field in a situation because Najee Harris is your guy, if that's not the right situation. And the same with Jaylen Warren. I'm sorry, if you're down and it's, second and goal on the half-yard line, put Najee Harris in there and let him try to run somebody over. I'm fine with that. But when it's less than 2 minutes to go and you've got to try to get the ball down the field in a tie game and you're probably going to be passing, I don't know why you would want to have Najee Harris out there. I think Jaylen Warren's your better option there. So I just think that personnel usage is such a big thing and can make such a big difference. And I think that was part of the biggest issue, other than micromanagement, in my opinion, when it came to Matt Canada.
Yeah, that's a great thought. There is the micromanagement. How much of a leash was on Kenny Pickett. We'll probably find that out over the next few weeks as well. Yeah. Something that we haven't talked about. So, all right, this is a fun question here. Do you think that the Steelers are going to hire an OC from the outside?
I give a Dave answer.
Yeah, do it. Do it, because it might be the same one I was going to say.
Depends on the next 7 games.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, because think about that. I think that's the plan right now. That's why everyone's interim, that you're going to go in with all options on the table for next year. But really, if the Steelers offense just comes out and just starts looking like they did in the preseason, we'll say that, then you've got to, and maybe the Steelers could turn it into the 2012 Ravens. Not that I ever want them to be like the Ravens, but for those of you that don't know what happened in that season, they fired their offensive coordinator and then won the Super Bowl. If the Steelers offense just looks so remarkably better and everyone's buying into what they're doing, then you have to consider rolling on with it. But if they go 6-1 over the last 7 games and then roll into the postseason, get a win or two, who knows? I'm not saying I expect that to happen, but if it does, you can't be pigeonholing yourself now. So I think everything's on the table. I say most likely they will, unless the Steelers make a deep playoff run based on their offense.
Yeah. Again, Eddie Faulkner gets the first crack at the audition, right? Because he's the one doing the interim work here. And again, if you see a smoother operating offense, you got to think also that what's going to go down over the next few weeks isn't going to be exactly what Eddie Faulkner would want to do if he were to set up the offense in training camp. You know what I mean? He's going to have a whole different playbook, I'm sure, than Matt Canada would. Now, what all he can introduce as the season progresses here will be interesting to watch. But I think, again, to me, the last 7 games aren't an ultimatum on anyone in this offense. I just think that you've got to take it as it comes and see what happens. But if the Steelers start scoring 30 points every game, then obviously this guy's going to need a look next year. You know, that just doesn't happen.
You removed a variable. You removed a variable to try to figure out what was going on with the Steelers offense. If it's more of the same, then you know that the problem is a different variable. Or if things are remarkably different, then you rather than have to wait and identify if, was it really Matt Canada next year when you have somebody else in there, it's going to be much better to know it now. Jeff Hartman, he laid it out right before Canada was fired on Let's Ride. He was exactly right. And that's part of the reason why this can be exciting.
It absolutely is. I'm excited for it. Obviously, Steelers fans, we were just wanting some real substantial change. We got that. We got the guy out the door. And again, nothing against Matt Canada personally. I wish him nothing but the best. And we've had to give that caveat, I think, here for a fan base that has not been giving that caveat in a lot of their comments on social media platforms. But man, I just think that there's so much excitement now here that we can that we can look forward to as we root on this team. So here's a question that that I wanted to pull up, because I just think that a lot of people have this dream that if you just change the backup quarterback, that all of a sudden the guy that we complained about for years and hated for years is now going to be the answer at quarterback, and he's just waiting in the wings as the third quarterback. I'm not buying that. But Captain Underpants asks, is Mitch Trubisky greater than Mason Rudolph in totality, or should our backup quarterback change? Dave, I'm not going to sit here and say Mason Rudolph is the answer at backup quarterback or starting quarterback either way, because we've seen his product on the field. I think we're just forgetting about it under the current struggles that we've seen. But what do you think? Is this something that the Steelers could tangibly change to spark something as well? Is give Rudolph a chance again?
I mean, the only question is which guy in uniform holding a clipboard would have to run in and take a snap if Kenny gets dirt in his eye again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what we're asking.
Exactly.
I liked the Mason Rudolph pick when they made it. I don't want to say always. I don't like it when people use always. I very often was supportive of Mason Rudolph, thought that he had potential, but I'm not convinced that he would be the guy. Just like, are we sure Pickett's the guy right now? No, that's a later question. If you want to bring that up, then that's going to be one to answer. I don't know. I really don't know. I think it comes more from a leadership and mentorship part when you have a young quarterback on a rookie contract and who the next guy up is. I think that's more about in the room than it is on the sidelines and the designation on Sundays. So I hope it doesn't even come to that. I don't want to see the Steelers have to deal with a backup quarterback having to come in.
Yep. 7 healthy games from Kenny Pickett. Please.
Yeah.
Offensive line, do what you can, do what you must to make sure that Kenny Pickett is not standing or riding crutches on the sideline for the rest of the season at any point. So let's bring this question up that you mentioned here. Does anyone here think Pickett can be the guy? We're seeing some of the comments in the comment section. I think that it's pretty divided across the scale here.
I love the way the question was asked.
Does anyone here think Pickett can be the guy? Yeah,
I do, because he said can be. Yeah, he said is, then I would say no. Based right now, do you think Kenny Pickett is the guy? No. Does anyone here think Pickett can be the guy? I think he can be. Does it mean that he's definitely going to be? No. Does it mean it might be an uphill battle? Yes. But that's part of what we're going to get to see here coming up.
Yeah.
Can he be? I mean, if you ask this same question when we had 2 weeks off between the preseason and week 1.
Yeah.
What do you think the answers are?
Everybody's going to say, absolutely.
Yeah.
What did we see? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So to me, this all comes down to the timing of the question. If you ask this question after Kenny Pickett had 2 fourth quarter comebacks in a row when the Steelers win, is it going to be different than, oh no, it's 2 really bad passing performances and the offensive coordinator's gone? This question, but I like that it says can be, because honestly, you would know the truth. Mason Rudolph could be the guy. We just wouldn't know it yet. Mitch Trubisky could be the guy. Any of them could be the guy if given the opportunity. But right now, Kenny Pickett is most likely, because he has that opportunity. He can be, but he still has an awful lot to show.
Right. Let me kind of ask you this in correlation with this, Dave, because I have specific thoughts on it. But to me, or no, let me form it as the question. I'm sorry. Here's how I'll form it here. In an offense with as much dysfunction as we grew accustomed to seeing, and we saw it was being kept afloat basically by these fourth quarter comebacks, our question the whole time was, is this sustainable? And then over the last few weeks, we saw significant regression from Kenny Pickett, and we saw significant regression from the offense as a whole especially in the second half where we had been putting up points, started out faster a couple times. The question is then, is the offense's dysfunction turning into a snowball effect over the course of the season the reason for Kenny Pickett's regression, or is it that Kenny Pickett's just a bad quarterback?
Well, I just find it interesting that the very first time Kenny Pickett doesn't have the fourth quarter comeback, then all of a sudden he's terrible.
Yeah.
Now, some people were saying he was terrible even before that because of everything else. To me, I think fourth quarter comeback, Kenny. This is a theory. I'm not saying this is definitely true because I think we're going to see it more. I think fourth quarter Kenny is that we saw, not this past fourth quarter, but earlier in the season, is the Kenny Pickett that you could get more often if he's not completely strapped down by a micromanaging offensive coordinator that doesn't let you play, change plays. I said this on Scobro. We talked about, well, DJ ran the wrong option route. Who's to say they even have option routes in Matt Canada's offense? He's such a micromanager. He might not want the receiver to have the option to do it. That's why Deontay Johnson came back with the answer of, I ran what I was supposed to, not the right route. He said he ran what he was supposed to.
Yeah,
because I think, it just kind of screams a little bit too much of how things were going.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm still trying to now remember your original question because I got off on everything.
No, yeah, is the snowball effect of a bad offense the cause of Kenny's regression? Because that to me is a huge factor in this.
But it's also really difficult because they've rushed for over 160 yards the last 3 games. You would think that would make things get better. And I think that's why Kenny, was getting frustrated and not having fun anymore. The first time the Steelers come out and rush for a bunch of yards, 3 games ago, he's like, hey, it's a lot easier when you have a good running game. Then it's all of a sudden, it's almost like, oh, well, let's have the good running game, and I'm going to make it more difficult for you. Yeah. I think it's weighing on your mind. There's a lot that has to go in your head as a quarterback.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just too optimistic about this coming in, but I just think there's a huge weight taken off of Kenny Pickett, and I want to see what he's going to look like with that weight being gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for it, Dave. I know you are too. I think most of Steelers Nation is as well, just to see how this all plays out now. And let's not be so focused as fans on the ultimate prize. That should be the team's goal, that we forget to enjoy the rest of the season, because too soon it's going to be over and done with, and we'll be begging for it for 7 months throughout the spring and summer. And it's going to be a long time to come back to us. So that's my thoughts on that portion as well. Let's do a couple quick hitters here, Dave. Just give me a quick answer and a thought on it, and I'll do the same. We've got one from Captain Underpants. Is Mike Tomlin's seat warming up yet? What do you think?
No, I think it's still his to do kind of what he wants to do. The question is he comfortable in the seat? I think is a bigger question.
Yeah. That to me is the same thing here. Is like, I think he's fine until he doesn't want to be fine anymore.
Exactly. You're 100%.
This is his call. Is my thought process there. So, all right, here's another one. When and how are they going to target Washington? I've been calling for this. Dave, I don't know. Is this something that you'd like to see Darnell Washington get more looks?
Who wouldn't? But at the same time, I'm going to say I'm not ready for it, because first I'd like to see him actually target Pat Freiermuth. If you had to choose between Pat Freiermuth and Washington, come on. Just target either of them would be fine. So to me, he's the next worry down the line. You've got to tackle some of these other ones ahead of that one.
Absolutely. I to me, the funniest thing that I saw on X all week was it was a gif of somebody super excited and said, Steelers fans knowing that Pat Fryermuth is coming back, really excited. And then evil laugh in the bottom of Matt Canada only targeting him 2 times in his return. It's like
once. I only had him with one target.
One target. Okay. Yeah, I thought it was 1
4
catch on
yards
2
behind
targets,
the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So
I
that
said
is
that
not
ahead
his
of the game.
game.
I'm like, they hadn't used him at all. So yeah, go ahead.
Right on. Okay, that was kind of it, but I just wanted to pull this up because we gotta remember this. Just remember, we're not ready to urinate on the fire.
Wait. You gotta wait for it, Jeremy.
We're not urinating on the fire, man.
Love it. Oh, perfect. Love the drop.
I have it edited in there for us to have. Yeah.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, any final thoughts before we head out? Let's get on with Saturday.
Yeah, I have one quick question for you. Very quick.
Right,
with Minkah Fitzpatrick out, the Steelers only have 3 safeties on the 53 for this week. It's DeMonte KZ, it's Tristan Thompson, and Miles Killebrew.
Yeah.
On the practice squad, they have Jalen Elliott, who came in on who was here in the preseason, but came in at Halloween, and then they added one more this week in Rowe. What's his first name? Eric
Rowe. Yeah.
Do they elevate one of those guys today, or do you think we're just going to see Patrick Peterson playing safety if they need it?
Yeah. I would expect an elevation personally. Okay. Because how many of those guys play special teams too, right? It's going to be at least Trenton Thompson and Miles Killebrew both playing special teams, which leaves KZ as your only defense only player. You got to bring up somebody else in case of injuries here, in my opinion. So, what maybe Rowe, maybe Elliott. Eric Rowe played for the Chiefs, I think, for a while. He was a pretty good player for them for a while. May have played for San Francisco too. If I remember correctly,
but he came in on Monday.
Yeah,
when it was. That's the only issue. Yeah. But I think it's more.
Have you seen as much shuffling of stuff like that as we've seen this year? Or is this just all injury based? Like,
I mean, think about it. Everyone's talking about, they're down the linebackers.
Yeah,
they got 3 safeties out. I mean, 2 on IR and Minkah Fitzpatrick ruled out. Yeah, they got more safeties out.
Huge.
So that's why you keep seeing those guys in. Because I mean, the Steelers are okay with what they're doing. I thought Thompson played very well last week. But what happens if one more goes out? You've got to just even have guys that are in here on the practice squad getting up to speed in order to be ready. So, inside linebacker and safety are decimated, and inside linebacker, none of them they're down 2, but they're not coming back. Safety at least they have a chance to get all 3 of them back. I mean, Elijah Riley wasn't even a big factor in things until everyone else was out. So
exactly,
you've got to have guys that are more up to speed. That's why you got to make some of these moves.
You do. And my final thought is the Steelers need to draft a safety this year. So,
I get them more
Dave,
of that.
right. Dave, I appreciate you coming on early with me, man. It's been fun. Thank you to everyone who tuned in on a Saturday morning as well. Again, hopefully we'll get some people listening to this on recording later as well. But we appreciate all of the faithful SCN family here. I hope you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving and that you did not get run over in the madness that is Black Friday shopping yesterday. If you're here, hopefully it's not because you were laying in bed all day with a broken leg or something along those lines. Dave, let's end on that note because that's a fun note. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in to the Q&A. We'll see you next week.